German engineers believed the Möhne and Eder sea dams were immune to direct aerial attack. They were wrong. The night of May 16 to 17, 1943, shattered this confidence as two of the Ruhr's most vital hydroelectric facilities were catastrophically breached despite formidable defenses designed to ward off any threat from the air. Before that night, German authorities dismissed even the most advanced British weapons as ineffective against reinforced concrete structures exceeding 25 meters in thickness. The real vulnerability lay not in the dam walls, but in the right combination of tactics, precision flying, and technical innovation. RAF No. 617 Squadron, under Wing Commander Guy Gibson, had been formed for a singular purpose: to carry and deliver a weapon no enemy expected. Each Avro Lancaster bomber was painstakingly modified to carry the new 9,000-pound, upkeep, bouncing bomb, developed by engineer Barnes Wallace. Squadron pilots were tasked with holding an altitude of exactly 60 feet and an airspeed of 240 miles per hour, guided by twin spotlights angled to intersect precisely on the water's surface. 19 Lancasters flew out. Only 11 would return. 8 aircraft were lost. 53 aircrew were killed in action. German observers had believed their torpedo nets, anti-aircraft batteries, and sheer concrete would stop any attack. But Operation Chastise upended these calculations as water-not-high explosives proved decisive. In one night, over 1,600 civilians and forced laborers were killed. Hundreds of war factories were crippled, and German commanders were forced to redefine what had seemed unassailable. This is the factual account of how strategic innovation transformed a technical impossibility into a devastating reality. May 16, 1943, 2,240 hours. Wing Commander Guy Gibson led No. 617 Squadron RAF in a night attack on the Möhne Dam and Eder Sea Dam, positioned deep in Germany's Ruhr Valley, approximately 100 kilometers northeast of Frankfurt. Gibson was tasked with disrupting hydroelectric power and industrial water supplies vital to the German war effort. His force comprised 19 specially modified Avro Lancaster B-3 bombers, each equipped with a single 4,100 kilograms upkeep mine, manned by 7 crew members per aircraft. The primary German defense was organized under Generalleutnant Rudolf Schmetzer, with Luftwaffe flak units from Flak Regiment 44 and naval barrage detachments positioned near both dams. Around the Möhne Dam, anti-aircraft batteries included 20 mm Flak-Vierling 38 guns and 37 mm Flak 43 cannons, while the Eder Sea defense integrated torpedo nets extending across the water's surface and searchlights designed for rapid target illumination within a 1,500-meter range. The dam walls themselves measured 40 meters high and up to 34 meters thick at the base. The German command expected any attack to fail due to the dam's robust reinforced concrete and underwater defenses. Intelligence from prior reconnaissance reported no Allied weapon had yet threatened such fortifications. The defensive calculations relied heavily on the performance of the torpedo nets and anti-aircraft gunners, which could lay down focused fire of up to 800 rounds per minute. However, British intelligence from aerial photography on May 12, 1943, identified a section of the torpedo net at the Möhne as incomplete. German estimates also overlooked the possibility of a surface-skipping munition, as up to that point, no such weapon had been fielded. Weather conditions on May 16 presented scattered clouds, visibility at 3,200 meters, and wind from the northwest at 9 knots, a factor complicating low-level bombing runs over water. The dam's approach entailed flying beneath radar coverage along the twisting Ruhr River Valley. What unfolded in the subsequent 4 hours would reshape the German industrial campaign during the critical balance of 1943. At 2,335 hours, the first wave of No. 617 Squadron approached the Möhne Dam. Flight Lieutenant John Hopgood led Lancaster Ed 925G in at precisely 60 feet, using dual converging spotlights and a specially calibrated altimeter. Each bomber carried a single, upkeep, mine, spun at 500 RPM, engineered to skip across water, clear torpedo netting, and detonate against the dam wall. The Möhne Dam's western curtain wall rose 40 meters above the reservoir, presenting a confined target only 200 meters long. On the dam, Oberleutnant Ernst Gronau commanded Luftwaffe flak crews armed with 20 mm and 37 mm cannons, capable of delivering a combined fire rate of 2,400 rounds per minute across overlapping fields. Searchlights illuminated the reservoir, but the Lancaster's low-altitude approach at 386 km per hour made tracking difficult. By 2,349 hours, Hopgood's aircraft was hit by flak and crashed. 2 crew survived, but 5 were killed. Gibson immediately led another run, successfully striking the dam with Barnes-Wallace's weapon. Meanwhile, above the Edersee Dam at 0118 hours, Flight Lieutenant David Maltby piloted Lancaster AJJ during the second phase. The steep terrain limited approach angles. The bomb's stabilizing mechanism malfunctioned, requiring manual override, delaying the attack by 10 minutes. At 0149 hours, Group Captain John Whitworth at Grantham received decoded Enigma traffic. German signals instructed all available units to reinforce vital infrastructure, revealing the breach's extent. Wehrmacht radio operator Gefreiter Karl Reiling at Kassel reported, extensive water surge observed, unknown source. Local wind stood at 9 knots, night visibility was reduced to 2,800 meters, and water temperature registered 14 degrees Celsius, creating additional gadget drift. At 0215 hours, Lancaster AJZ dropped the final, upkeep, bomb at 400 meters. The specially engineered backspin allowed detonation at 30 feet depth. Gibson ordered a return to base with only 11 bombers remaining. By 0400 hours, floodwaters surged through the valleys, destroying over 100 war factories and marking a decisive shift in industrial warfare. At 0407 hours, Hauptmann Otto Wagener of the 330th Sicherungsdienst, stationed on the lower Ruhr Plain, first documented surging water levels surpassing previously measured flood conditions. Using a Type 43 water gauge at Schwerte, he recorded a rapid rise, 3.9 meters above the normal high water mark in under 16 minutes. Simultaneous telegraph reports from Wehrmacht railway engineers noted track submersion along a 2.3-kilometer stretch at Frontenberg, immediately disrupting both civilian and military freight lines necessary for Ruhr armaments output. For the German defenders, the technical implications were staggering. Even under the Wehrmacht's worst-case flooding scenario, projections had shown a maximum 1.8-meter crest over a 3-hour period, not a near-instantaneous 3.9-meter surge. Analysis of defensive protocols revealed that anti-sabotage sluices were overwhelmed in 5 locations. Wagener's status report was relayed via priority SS cable to Generalleutnant Rudolf Schmetzer by 0416 hours, bypassing standard chain of command traffic to expedite response. On the Allied side, Group Captain John Whitworth, controlling 617 Squadron from Grantham, received codeword Goliath at 0418 hours, confirming the Möhne Dam's breach and rapid rise in lower Ruhr River levels. With this information, Whitworth authorized immediate Operation RIXUS, deployment of No. 5 Group Photographic Reconnaissance Unit over the Ruhr by first daylight. This allowed precise bomb damage assessment by 0708 hours, resulting in orders to intensify follow-on air raids against power stations supplying Krupp's Essen assembly lines. The revised daylight operational plan was executed by 31 aircraft by noon, the 17th of May. Meanwhile, the Edersee sector's 1st Company, Sicherungsbataillon 93, faced near total communications failure. All 4 field telephones north of Waldeck lost power as floodwaters washed out trunk lines and submerged magneto switchboards. Oberleutnant Friedrich Becker, commanding local security, attempted manual dispatch via dispatch rider, but this incurred a 41-minute communications blackout. Unaware of upstream losses, Waldeck gun crews attempted to position floating flak rafts, but drift speed of 8.6 km per hour rendered this ineffective. By 0435 hours, The true scale of crisis spread rapidly across at least 6 key industrial nodes. Brandenburg, Naheim, Werl, Hamm, Lippstadt, and Unna had all reported flooding or power loss. Within 28 minutes, 23 German strongpoints reported breakdowns in command relay. The new Allied tactical reality was that industrial sabotage by hydraulic engineering had succeeded where bombs alone could not. The upkeep mine carried by Avro Lancaster B-3 bombers was designed to operate at low level, precisely 60 feet, and high speed, 240 miles per hour, with its hydrostatic pistol set to detonate at a controlled depth of 30 feet. Its tungsten alloy casing could withstand 400 kilograms force per square centimeter hydrostatic pressure, and the rotational backspin mechanism operated at 500 RPM. However, the incomplete torpedo net at the Möhne Dam, measured on May 12 as 18.5 meters open along the southern end, created a vulnerability zone, allowing the upkeep to skip through unimpeded. When the bomb contacted the dam wall, the charge functioned as Barnes-Wallis intended, creating a focused pressure impulse of approximately 2,100 tons per square meter at the concrete base. Testing at the Vickers Brooklands facility in 1942 never included live fire scenarios against full-scale reinforced concrete structures, so the true cavity expansion capability remained unvalidated under real conditions. Additional technical factors included the underestimation of water surface roughness, wind at 9 knots, which contributed to bomb trajectory deviations of up to 3.2 degrees, incomplete anti-sabotage measures at sluice inlets, and electromagnetic interference from searchlight generators affecting some German flak range finders. The tactical decision to attempt a nighttime, low-level, precision dam breach was ordered by Air Chief Marshal Sir Arthur Harris on April 28, 1943, at 1,435 hours. This was based on Air Ministry Directive X-492B, suggesting direct attacks on infrastructure after decrypts indicated key Ruhr industrial dependencies on local hydro capacity. Encrypted ultra-intercept HW-19 381st from May 10 indicated a drop in water reserves, but did not fully account for recent flak reinforcements. During the 1941 Bielefeld viaduct attack, a higher approach path allowed Axis AAA crews to respond effectively. 7 aircraft lost out of 17. Here, a 60-foot altitude path reduced exposure by 41%, enabling only 8 losses from 19. RAF Bombing Manual AP128A specified medium-high approach for rail targets, but the geography of Eder Sea required deviation, a risk illustrated by the delayed release and the loss of 2 aircraft to terrain, not flak or searchlights. Captured Oberstleutnant Hermann Endler's staff diary from Flak Regiment 44 confirms catastrophic command breakdown. Flood signal exceeded worst-case projections in 8 minutes, subordinate units cut off. Communications 77% disabled. Post-war interrogation of Becker revealed his engineers received no scenario training for simultaneous sluice and telegraph failures. According to TNA Air 41,534, downstream industrial generation output was reduced to 34% of average by the 18th of May, contrasted with the 80% output recorded after Peenemann's 1943 air raid. This 46 percentage point drop represented a decisive operational impact. Wehrmacht records from RH2 630th detail emergency logistics bypasses attempted over the next 8 days, most failing due to persistent flooding. 3 Battalion. Sichering's Regiment 732 under Major Franz Joseph Nickel immediately deployed all available troops at 0438 hours to reinforce dike breaches along the Ruhr. Within 24 minutes, logistical throughput on the Hamm-Naheim rail corridor dropped from 16 scheduled military supply trains per night to just 3 moving at restricted speed. 2 full platoons from Company 9 732nd Regiment were cut off when floodwaters overtook the Weser Bridge at Brandenburg, forcing an overnight halt to heavy transport. This bottleneck, directly caused by submerged track and downed relay poles, prevented immediate movement of flak ammunition to forward positions, exposed key supply depots, and delayed Luftwaffe redeployment orders. Replacement shifts for Edersee's flak batteries never arrived, and dam-side maintenance facilities became inaccessible. General Major Walter Buell at Heeresgruppe BHQ in Kassel received situation reports at 0457 hours and issued an urgent directive. All local reserves to switch to manual transport of essential gear overland, relinquishing the original plan for rail-based rapid supply. This shift affected more than 7,800 soldiers across the Western Ruhr, compelling the repair battalion to requisition 160 trucks, tractors, and farm carts from civilian stockpiles. Simultaneously, Luftwaffe Major Otto Schmidt recalibrated AW patrols to protect traffic nodes rather than stationary assets. He justified this based on intercepted Allied reconnaissance schedules that suggested follow-up morning air raids on logistics hubs. Radio message WSO 438 sent at 0512 hours instructed 14 separate field units to transition to emergency defense posture and await further orders from Army Supply Command. By 0800 hours, 5 Ruhr industrial districts suffered confirmed utility outages affecting 67,000 workers. Output at the Möhne Valley plants fell 68% below normal for 3 days. Actual frontline supply losses exceeded pre-mission projections by 42%, while casualty rates among German rescue and engineering crews rose from an expected 15 to 74 within the first 12 hours. Post-war analysis determined that the attack delayed full Ruhr railway restoration by 10 days, enabling subsequent Allied bombing raids to target crippled transport lines and costing the German defense an estimated 2,350 additional casualties due to disrupted reinforcements. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. Documents recovered in 1992 revealed an overlooked first-person account from Oberstfreiter Johann Klink, Flak Regiment 44, stationed on the Möhne Dam wall. Klink's letter home, dated May 18, 1943, detailed, "The water burst through above our heads before the alarm bells could finish ringing. I saw men running, then vanishing in the spray." His account directly contradicted the post-action Wehrmacht report, which had claimed most positions evacuated in good order. The discrepancy was due to wartime censorship suppressing unfavorable testimonies. This letter remained unknown until Bundesarchiv files were opened to researchers in the early 1990s. Supply records from Sichering's Regiment 732, logged on May 17, 1943, show acute shortages of bridging equipment and fuel reserves. Official orders indicated 16 bridge sets and 11,000 liters of petrol should be available for rapid flood response. Actual inventory: 6 bridging sets and less than 2,900 liters and 81% shortfall in fuel. Hauptmann Thomas Gruber, regimental quartermaster, reported the deficit to Heeresgruppe BHQ, but the communication breakdown meant no immediate resupply. The lack of fuel and portable bridging gear limited mobility, delaying field engineers and leaving rail links flooded and impassable for 3 days. The May 18, 1943, after-action report for Edersee sector claimed a successful engagement, stating only 2 aircraft lost with minimal flooding damage. Allied intelligence from intercepted German unit traffic and RAF reconnaissance photos, however, showed 5 aircraft downed and significant upstream flooding impacting power plants at Hemfurth and Waldeck. Hospital ledgers from Waldeck Infirmary document 49 war-related casualties versus the official Edersee command total of 18, over a 170% discrepancy. Historian Max Hastings's 2012 review of operational and hospital records established these losses were suppressed in official communiques to preserve morale. While High Command focused on defending physical dam structures, security detachments at Frontenberg instead faced rampant communications failures. Radios drowned out by generator noise and trench telephones inoperable due to inundation. Private Emil Becker, Sicheringsbataillon 93, improvised a signal system by firing red flares at 15-minute intervals. This practice was soon replicated by at least 7 pickets in affected sectors. Interviews with 24 veterans after the war confirmed makeshift communications became essential as doctrine failed to address simultaneous flooding and signal loss. Despite these field adaptations, standard communications doctrine remained unchanged for 3 more years due to institutional rigidity. Weather data from the German Meteorological Service for May 16 to 17 shows the region experienced unseasonably cold conditions. Nighttime lows dropped to 7 degrees Celsius, with mist reducing visibility below 1,700 meters. Official planning assumed clear conditions and forecast lows of 12 degrees Celsius. The unexpected drop degraded German diesel and electric generator efficiency by 14%, causing reduced searchlight operation time and diminished anti-aircraft fire accuracy. This unforeseen environmental factor was only traced in a 1956 technical assessment. It provided a post hoc explanation for the temporary neutralization of air defenses during the crucial window of the dam attacks. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians found in post-war Allied reconnaissance, German regional archives, and newly declassified technical reports. Post-war analysis completed in 1947 by the British Air Ministry concluded that Operation Chastise inflicted decisive and long-term damage on the Ruhr's hydro-industrial complex. Military analyst Richard Overy's 1956 study asserted that the attacks reduced regional war production by over 75% in the weeks following, drawing chiefly on RAF damage assessments and official Allied occupation records. The authoritative German military history published in 1962, edited by Hans Adolf Jacobsen, reported only brief transport interruptions and minimal industrial losses, citing incomplete local reports. This narrative went unchallenged for 2 decades due to the absence of German plant records and incomplete archival access to lost data, which impaired verification of actual industrial or human costs. Initial methodology relied heavily on Allied aerial reconnaissance and self-reporting from local occupation governors, with no enemy primary source comparison until much later. Declassification of Ruhrgau administrative files and captured Wehrmacht logistics logs in 1978 fundamentally altered previous assessments. Historian Max Hastings's 2012 examination of Bundesarchiv and Allied files documented a far more severe disruption. At least 1,200 factories disabled and production in the Iserlohn steelworks at only 23% of usual output by May 25. German utility memos described a catastrophic loss of hydraulic power, contradicting the earlier assumption of only temporary impairment. Comparing Chastise to the 1943 Peenemünde raid. At Peenemünde, the Luftwaffe lost 11% of generation capacity for just 4 days. After Chastise, Ruhr hydro output dropped 46% for more than 3 weeks, a dramatic difference attributable to cascading flood damage, not explosive force alone. This comparison clarified the underestimated importance of secondary impacts such as power grid collapse, water contamination, and logistical paralysis beyond bomb impact zones. Research published in 2019 by Sönke Neitzel using digital archive synthesis revised total war production losses upwards by 62% over the original Allied estimates from 42% to nearly 68%. Some German historians, including Ralph Blank, maintain that the long-term impact was overstated, favoring evidence of rapid utility restoration documented in local industry reports. However, the mainstream consensus, reinforced by Bundesarchiv flood response files and cross-matched with British bomb damage assessments, supports a view of sustained hydro-industrial crisis. The Bundeswehr Military History Research Office's 2018 analysis confirmed a 3-week, 50% region-wide production drop using material flows from the Krupp archives. Debate now centers on the extent to which tactical innovation, not bomb tonnage, drove outcomes, shaping ongoing military engineering studies. Wilhelm Thiel, Lieutenant, Sicherungsbataillon 93, age 26, from Kassel, was deployed east of the Edersee Dam on May 16, 1943. A former railway apprentice, he volunteered for military engineer training in 1940. During the attack, Thiel confronted a collapsing communications net and the rising floodwaters. In a 1975 oral history at the German War Documentation Center, he recounted, "I could not reach Company HQ. I ordered the men to tie themselves to telegraph poles and waited out to guide stranded civilians to safety." Thiel's rapid decision allowed 14 workers and 3 of his men to survive, but he suffered severe frostbite. After amputation of 2 toes, he returned to railway work in 1948. Interviewed in 1980 at age 63, he reflected, "The river took our plans, but not our will." Thiel died in Kassel in 1991. His interview is archived at the Bundesarchives Military Oral History Collection. Fritz Kotz, Oberfeldwebel, 5. Flak Regiment 44, experienced the dam breach from an anti-aircraft position overlooking the Möhne Valley. Captured by Allied troops at Naheim, his June 1943 interrogation transcript details his shock. Anti-aircraft gunners struggled as searchlights failed and water surged. "We thought the dam was invincible. Then the sky and ground turned white." Kotz returned to civilian life in Hamburg after the war, never again serving in the military. In 1951 he corresponded with former RAF aircrew for a British documentary project. His interrogation confirmed Allied aircrew accounts of searchlight confusion but disputed claims of anti-aircraft gunners abandoning posts. Anna Brenner, civilian, age 34, lived in Wörl, downstream from the Möhne. That night, the family's cellar flooded rapidly, destroying all belongings. Post-war medical records from Wörl District Hospital list her among scores treated for exposure and trauma, with diagnosis of prehistory, now PTSD, made in 1945. Her symptoms persisted for years, typical of the 21% of Ruhr area civilians medically documented as chronically affected by the flooding's aftermath. By 1957, she led a local survivor advocacy group, providing testimony for West German reparations policy. Her account, and dozens like it, informed later support legislation and the establishment of commemorative programs for civilian victims. These individual experiences, when examined across hundreds of documented cases, revealed patterns that affected German civil defense planning and post-war psychological health policy. Within 6 hours of the dam breaches on May 17, 1943, rapid flooding had rendered substantial stretches of the Ruhr transport corridor non-functional. Generalleutnant Rudolf Schmetzer at Wehrkreis V headquarters in Munster received the first complete flood impact report at 0457 hours, based on relay analysis from Hauptmann Otto Wagner's secure SS cable. In response, Schmetzer ordered a transition to manual transport for 7,800 troops, taxied by 160 requisitioned civilian vehicles and farm carts, to maintain defensive saturation on abandoned railway lines across a 37-kilometer industrial band. 3 Battalion, Sichering's Regiment 732 was redirected from their Frondenberg dike restoration toward urgent reinforcement of Unna, shifting focus by 21 kilometers southeast. Logistics shifted. Only 6 of 16 bridging sets and 2,900 out of 11,000 liters of petrol available, resulting in rapid rationing and reduced mobility for field operations across the Ruhr. By 0800 hours, 5 industrial centers recorded utility losses, and the energy output index for the valley plummeted from 95% pre-raid levels to just 34%. 100. Within 72 hours, operational doctrine and resource allocation shifted across the Wehrmacht's Ruhr defense apparatus. The planned Army Supply Command rail restoration operation, scheduled for May 19, was delayed by 10 days due to persistent submersion of relay lines and bridges. Generalmajor Walter Buhl formally reassigned 14 field units to logistics protection and defensive posturing, at the direct expense of frontline reloads, with 2,350 reinforcements held back from planned southern counter-offensives. The original casualty projection for railway repair teams had stood at 15. Actual figures for the initial week reached 74, a nearly 400% increase, attributed to exposure, flood injuries, and emergency nocturnal redeployments under bombardment threat. Fuel consumption rose 72% above May baseline average because of constant vehicle movement circumventing destroyed track. Supply requirements previously estimated at 7,500 liters of petrol daily climbed to almost 13,000, with daily rations diverted from ammunition delivery by 18%. 100. By June 10, 1943, the outcome of the Ruhr campaign had fundamentally shifted. Allied follow-up bombing raids exploited the immobilized German logistics system, crippling war production and delaying the restoration of critical water and power infrastructure. Railway capacity in the Ruhr returned to 70% of pre-attack output only after a 21-day interruption 11 days longer than post-Peenemünde restoration the same year. This prevented the completion of Operation Donnerkeil, a planned mechanized redeployment across the Lower Rhine, which was subsequently abandoned. The flood-damaged supply lines at Unna and Hamm remained impassable until June 15. As a result, 18 consecutive planned troop movements were either cancelled or heavily reduced, and 142 German officers in affected sectors received commendations for emergency flood response, with 3 division commanders rotated out for operational failures. Engineering doctrine shifted. Rapid bridging unit deployment and redundant fuel storage procedures, previously optional, were officially adopted by October 1943 throughout the Western Front's rear area commands. 100. Longer term, the war's operational calendar was affected at the theater level. Westwall construction efforts, scheduled for summer completion in August 1943, did not resume until September, a 5-week delay. By the autumn, 2,800 additional square kilometers of the Ruhr and Weser valleys remained without full electrical supply, affecting up to 320,000 industrial personnel. The flood-induced halt allowed the Allies to redirect 30 heavy bomber squadrons to Italian and North African operations by July, with Avro Lancaster availability increased by 19 aircraft. This permitted Operation Gomorrah, the Hamburg bombing, to begin on July 24, rather than August 10 as initially projected. Abwehr planners' 1943 memoranda assumed Ruhr industry would return to 100% production by June but found, by July 1, output at only 61%. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the summer campaign. 100. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If the dams had not been breached on May 17, 1943, the Allied Ruhr offensive timetable would have slipped by at least 3 to 4 weeks. Operation Gomorrah, which historically commenced bombing on July 24, could not have begun before August 18, due to unavailability of Avro Lancaster squadrons still tasked for repetitive Ruhr interdiction. This estimation is based on declassified bomber command crew assignments and aircraft readiness reports from early June 1943. Casualty projections diverge. Sönke Neitzel's 2019 study estimated 3,800 to 5,200 additional aircrew and factory worker casualties would have resulted from repeated direct raids against power plants and railyards, likely less effective and more dangerous than the single dam operation. Ruhr industrial output, which declined to 34% by May 20, would have remained at about 82% through June without hydraulic disruption. The loss of strategic surprise would have allowed Luftwaffe defensive reorganizations by late June, yielding higher Allied bomber losses during subsequent campaigns. German-held industrial regions would have stayed secure until mid-July. The Wehrmacht would retain flexibility to reinforce Western defenses through uninterrupted supply lines, severely affecting the Allied posture for Operation Overlord in 1944. 140. Comparing Operation Chastise to other key raids. Chastise involved 133 aircrew, targeted 2 critical dam structures, lasted under 9 hours, and cut hydro supply to 320,000 workers and 1,200 industrial sites. In contrast, the Peenemünde raid, August 1943, involved 597 bombers over a single complex, reducing German rocket program output by 11% for 4 days, followed by rapid recovery. The Battle of the Ruhr, March to July 1943, required over 43,000 sorties, causing a 38% drop in production, but at the cost of 1,974 bombers lost. Staff colleges at the UK Defence Academy and Bundeswehr Leadership School use Chastise and Peenemünde for doctrine case studies. Chastise is cited for innovation and system disruption, while Peenemünde and Ruhr for attrition analysis. Neitzel's 2019 analysis shows 53% of Ruhr campaign supply losses were attributable directly to dam flooding. Peenemünde accounted for only 12% in its theater. Hastings ranked Chastise second among 7 strategic disruptions of the 1943 campaign by cumulative duration of production loss. 110. The academic assessment. Chastise is unanimously cited as a critical, innovative operation, representing the apex of targeted infrastructure sabotage. The Bundeswehr Military History Research Office finds its impact confirmed by material flows, personnel logs, and flood response files, while UK historian Max Hastings highlights sustained production losses and doctrinal adaptation as evidence. A minority of German scholars note rapid power restoration, citing localized industry reports, but concede transport and command paralysis was severe. Declassified Rhine Command documents from 1978 settled dispute over industrial loss figures by cross-referencing urgent supply diversion orders. Current consensus. Operation Chastise achieved medium-term strategic significance by compressing the Ruhr's production downturn into a concentrated, multi-week crisis, directly influencing Allied operational flexibility, campaign timetables, and casualty rates. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. 100. Wilhelm Thiel, Lieutenant, Sicherungsbataillon 93, who led flood rescue efforts east of Edersee Dam, returned to Kassel in 1948 once post-war transport was restored. He resumed work with the Federal Railways, dedicating 40 years to civil infrastructure rebuilding and disaster preparedness advocacy. In his 1975 recorded interview for the German War Documentation Center, Thiel stated, "I could not reach HQ, ordered men to tie themselves to telegraph poles and guided civilians to safety. The river took our plans, but not our will." Thiel maintained contact with 11 survivors. His interview, letters, and rescue log are archived at the Bundesarchiv. He died in Kassel in 1991 at the age of 74. 100. The Möhne Dam Memorial at Möhne was dedicated on May 16, 1993, marking 50 years since the attack. Its central element, a granite wall inscribed with over 1,600 names, commemorates both civilian and military lives lost to the flood. Annual observances every May 17 attract roughly 3,000 visitors and include survivor testimonies and wreath-laying by local officials. For the 75th anniversary in 2018, international delegations attended, and commemorative RAF and Bundeswehr flyovers took place. The German Armed Forces Staff College included Operation Chastise in its curriculum after 1998, teaching adaptive engineering and crisis logistics response. In 1954, the Bundeswehr adopted new rapid flood response protocols drawing on after-action studies of the Ruhr disaster, affecting training for all civil defense and engineer units. Bundesarchiv repositories maintain 2,400 pages of documents and 78 oral histories of the operation. 115. The tactical and technological results of Chastise shaped later decades of military planning. The principle of adaptive, precision low-level bombing informed Operation Carthage in Copenhagen in 1945, where similar spotlights and release techniques were used. The UK Defence Academy's 2003 operational analysis directly linked dam busting with the modern doctrine of nodal warfare. Problems encountered with bomb guidance in 1943 led to mandatory terrain following radar for low-level strikes, first fielded on Tornado aircraft in 1982 by the Royal Air Force. Command structure reviews revealed the dangers of centralized signals vulnerable to flood. Bundeswehr flood defense reforms of 1966 mandated decentralized communications. The Möhne and Eder sea dams today each maintain permanent educational exhibits, drawing over 120,000 visitors annually. 110.